Well, hello there, how are you all doing? So, I know it was only, yesterday or the day before when I uploaded my last video. But you're going to get 3 more after this. That are just three parts to a Fletcher Prouty, Colonel Fletcher Prouty speech that he gave in 1975 at Yale University on the anatomy of assassination, because it ties in quite nicely with what I'm going to talk about today, which is Charlie Kirk again. And the title of my last video was What We Need to Learn, and you'll notice the title of this video was What Have We Learned? Well, nothing, apparently. Why is my title that? Well, there's several reasons. At the moment, there's a notion that the people or entity or nation behind his death was the State of Israel, or Mossad. And everyone's pushing this and coming out with all these little bits of evidence here and there that just seem to have miraculously appeared, by the way, being pushed by 3 particular individuals, 4 if you count Nick Fuentes, and pushed very hard, almost as if they need you to look towards Israel. What am I talking about? Well, you see, even if Charlie Kirk was questioning Israel's motives and narratives and actions and behaviours, there are 2 other people that started out being in favour of Israel, quite staunch defenders of Israel, and then have seemingly altered course, shall we say, and begun to question, criticise, and out, shall we say, Israel. They are both extremely high profile, and were, before they started criticising Israel, still are, now they're criticising Israel, and have been in countless situations similar to what Charlie Kirk was in on the 10th of September, countless times. These 2 people are Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. In fact, Tucker Carlson's probably vastly more influential than Charlie was. You see, to pin it on Israel because he was noticing, as they say, Israel is laughable. Why didn't they do the same with Candace Owens? She did exactly the same sort of scenarios countless times, over and over and over again, even with Charlie Kirk in some cases, where she could have been taken out quite easily. Tucker Carlson is exactly the same. But they're still alive. Now, this leads to only a couple of conclusions. Either Israel didn't take out Charlie Kirk, or Candace and Tucker are on the payroll. Now, many of you are going to be turning around and going, yeah, but they criticise Israel, so why would Israel take them out? Like, why would you pay them? You see how that logic that you've just got from that second option, apply that to Israel killed Charlie Kirk. Now, so who did? Well, this becomes a little more, what's the word, obvious when you actually pay attention and know what the fuck you're looking for.
They're perpetrators of assassinations. Are we again confronted with a young man that was a lone nut who kept a diary and friends on a grassy knoll down there in Saudi Arabia? Or was the king killed by some sort of a machine or conspiracy that had other plans for actions in the Middle East? Mr. Kissinger had left the Middle East the day before. Mr. Nixon had tallied in Dallas until the morning of the assassination. So there's a theme running through these things that the king is dead. But what is the meaning then of the controls that go through these things? In this case, the resumption of power in Saudi Arabia almost seemed to be a little too even, too easy. What had really happened there? And I think what had really happened there will give us a picture of what goes on in assassinations, how they come about, and then we can take that kind of a picture and begin to unravel some of the others, and we might come a little closer to the mark. Technically, what happened in Saudi Arabia is that the king's guard, the king's elite, was broken. Now, you can keep a man alive. If you don't believe that, read your history of General de Gaulle. Even in the deepest and darkest days of World War II, there were thousands of people who would like to have had a shot at de Gaulle. I remember after the Cairo conference in Marrakech, Morocco, Churchill was recovering from a bout with influenza.
This is an operation that has been ongoing by the deception and industrial complex for nearly 100 years now. In fact, exactly 80 years now. Starting off in its Gladio sort of form, its evolutionary form, shall we say, before it became what it is today. The CIA and MI6 won't necessarily get their own hands dirty, that's true, but they will use their usual, which is organised criminals, particularly Jewish, Irish and Italian mafia. Their hit tunes. I'm sure many of you are as interested in this sort of side of the fence as I am, and many of you watching it will have heard of Murder Inc. Murder Inc. was basically a conglomerate of Jewish and Italian hitmen that decided to band together and form their own organisation, and they were utilised by everybody and got extremely effective at what they did. Fast forward to 1963 and the CIA and MI6, or the Deception Industrial Complex, has their own off the books, shall we say, very highly trained version of murdering. Still using their contacts in the organised crime world, because Gladio, remember? If any of you had any sense, you start looking into this sort of thing. Your best port of call to start off is Fletcher Prouty's book, Colonel Fletcher Prouty's book, The Secret Team, because that will tell you all about it. And from there, you can start working things out yourself. The people that are in control aren't Jewish. That's another thing. They may be, well, there's one family in there that are, but they're more Iranian Iraqi sort of Jews, which at the end of the day aren't really Jews anyway anymore. Just because someone's got a Jewish sounding name doesn't make them automatically Jewish. You'll be surprised to learn that 90% of Western surnames, as well as Christian names, derive from Hebrew names, Hebrew words. Because they come from the fucking Bible. We're Christian nations, you morons. But no, you still float about, still claiming everyone's Jewish, and most often you've got it completely wrong. Sometimes you surprise me. I'll be honest, you do. Well, oh yeah, he doesn't look it, but he just sounds it. That kind of thing. But these people in control, apart from the Sassoon family, are very, 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 very old European royal bloodlines and black nobility bloodlines. More specifically with the black nobility, the papal princes, the papal prince bloodlines. So like Orsini, Farnese, Savoy. The European bloodlines, well, that's your Ruzafiel Satter, your Ejo Koskinen, Byron, Wallenberg, Glucksberg, Kreutz, Grosvenor, Wallenberg. In fact, you'll find their money is usually behind everything that goes on. And they usually use CIA and MI6 front organisations. People tend to forget that the CIA and MI6 are extremely rich and own a vast amount of business. Major multinational corporations are owned by the CIA. And they use them to very often launder money to dish out funding. This is why they were kicking off when USAID was getting cut back, because a lot of their activities were being exposed. And if you bothered to pay attention, you'd suddenly see that things like APAC, when you actually look where their money comes from, their donors, oh dear, they track back to the CIA, MI6, Open Society. Gets a lot of its funding from donations from CIA, MI6. The US and UK intelligence machine is an unbelievable feat of covert engineering. I want you to do something for me, right? Do me a favour. After you watch this, go and look up the Wallenberg Foundation, just to get an idea of the kind of scope that these families, the actual families in control, that these families have over everything, what they fund, what that Wallenberg Foundation is used for, what it funds, what it researches through its own privately owned university, Linköping University. The Swedes, Finns, Norwegians, French and Swiss and British are some of the sneakiest motherfuckers you will ever meet. Likewise the Italians. And they're all dominated over by one family that I keep mentioning over and over and over again. And if any of you have turned round and said Rothschild right at that moment, I am going to start my engine, drive all the way to your house, knock on your front door, say, come here, and then tell you to turn around before I whack you over the back of the head for being so stupid. The Rothschilds are an agent, a tool of these upper levels, and they're all presided over by the Picer family, as I've mentioned countless times. Yes, information is very scarce on the Picer family, but that's deliberate. It didn't used to be. It never used to be. A lot of the information nowadays has been scrubbed, even from the Wayback Machine, because they own it all. They own the CIA, MI6. You can just get them to scrub what they want. You also change information as well. Lots and lots and lots of information. Well, there is places where you can get hold of that, some of that info. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to most of it in time, but there is a book available on my Telegram page, my Sam Fisher Data Drops Telegram page, and I'll post a link to it below. And it's called Pandora's Box. The hidden hand of Europe's oldest family. Because they are. You guys need to realise that these people, particularly the Pashas, have been around for well over 1,000 years in their sort of empire kind of phase. Getting back all the way back to Charlemagne, even before Charlemagne with Merovec, really, his grandfather, 500 AD. But they in turn originate further north, in the far north areas of Norway, Sweden and Finland, and they stem back even further still to the area of the Kola Peninsula and the northern Ural Mountains. Now, if you watch my Epics Wars and maybe Alien Tech series, you'll know exactly what that means and where they stem from. Lloyd Pye, a guy I used to love watching because he was just brilliant. Fantastic guy. Before he died of, I think, throat cancer in 2003, maybe before then. Amazing researcher. And he wrote a book called Everything You Know About the World Is Wrong. And I'm going to tell you what's right. And I always used to think that was quite an arrogant statement, because surely it can't be. Surely we've got some of it right. But the fact is, no. The vast majority of you, no, you don't. You don't have that. You have very little right, to be perfectly honest. So yes, everything you know about the world is wrong. The Anunnaki were ancient human, very technologically advanced, and I'm going to get a bit sort of woo-woo here, but they were possessed by plasma entities. Go and watch my Epics Wars and Maybe Alien Tech series after you go and look at the Wallenberg Foundation. So many of you need to start catching up. See you later.